Greetings, welcome to the back of the studio. Today I'll be processing some clay and I'm going to share with you a little bit of my process. This is where I do everything except the digging. The digging's done up the road a little ways. I'll show you here what's in this pile. You may not see it from the view right now, but what you can see is this barrel here. That's where everything will go after I've screened it. And I'm going to show you how I do screening and the slurrying and all that, and how I make throwing clay from clay out of the ground. All right, I'm not doing the video in order of how I do the process, but this is what I'm working on today, so I'll just show what I'm doing right now. In the bin here, I have some clay that's already been run through two screens. One, a window screen that I've built a box around right here, pretty simple. And then I run it through a 40 mesh lab sieve into a bucket. And then I'll take all of what I'm processing at any given time and fill this barrel as much as I've got for the time being. After it settles a bit, I'll siphon the water off of the top into buckets. And I'm gonna reuse all of that water for the next batch of clay. And I'll show what I do with that here in a minute. So after this is done siphoning, I'm gonna, like I said, reuse the water, and I'll take the slop or the slurry out of the bin here into the drying bin. And I'll get the camera here and show a closer up of the drying bin so you can see how it works. So you see it's canvas that I put the canvas in there to kind of protect the clay and make sure I can get it out of there easily. The bin itself is a wood bin. It probably measures about 4 foot by 2 foot. And it's, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches deep. And underneath I have some bricks that just lets the air flow underneath. And what you see here is a cement board, like a hardy backer board used for tile in construction. And it's screwed up into the wood this way. There's probably a screw every few inches down the row here. And it seems to work all right. I've used it for a couple months now and it seems to be holding up all right. But you see it's kind of like an absorbent, hard concrete board material. So it will sort of absorb the water from the clay slop that I put in there and allow it to dry a little bit before I can move it to the next stage of the process. And the canvas there. And it's pretty small, so I can actually, after a batch has set up to dry a bit, I can actually just grab this thing up and pull it out of there with the clay inside, and I'll take it into the shop and set it on the concrete floor for a couple of days after it's set a little bit. And you see I've got water in here siphoning. It's a pretty small tube, so I may get a larger diameter tube, but I'm not too busy, so I don't need it to move too fast. It's all right. And in here is the clay that's been screened a couple times. I've probably got enough to make, I don't know, 80 pounds of clay, something like that, maybe 100. I'll go over here and show what's going on. This is the clay that I dig. You see it's got a bunch of stuff in it, a bunch of leaves, grass, some roots. I find it's pretty close to the surface of the ground, so it's got some roots in it. And I let it sit out here for the weather to just beat it up a little bit. You see it's cracking over there. That's from being wet and then drying under the sun. And I just let it sit as long as it's gonna sit. I just leave it out in the open like this. Keep the plastic underneath of it to, you know, to protect it from getting mixed in with the soil underneath. I don't want it to do that. If I had a big concrete pad or something, it would be nice to do it on, but this is what I've got and it works for me. You may be able to find something different or better. And over here is the bin where I'm slurrying everything. So I'll take the water from the water buckets over there and dump it into here. And then take my clay and add it. Just show a few handfuls of this. I'm gonna let that sit at least overnight. I'll probably even let it sit for a few days. It helps break it down pretty well. Okay, I'll show you the next step here in a moment. Well, I can't actually show you the next step yet because I need to let it sit for a few days, so I'll explain what I do. I take a mixer bit. There's many kinds of these you can find at any hardware store. It goes into a drill, and I do what's called blunging, or mixing, you know, so I'll mix it into a slurry. And I found over the past couple years of doing this kind of thing, it helps to just mix a lot of water in there, and basically it will have the consistency of a glaze when I go to screen it, and that helps it pass through the screen really easily. And especially the 40 mesh screen that I'm going to go through after this. I found if you mix it too thick, it takes a long time to process clay. So just mix it thin, run it through pitcher by pitcher. Usually I'll take the pitcher and dip it into the bin that I use for slurrying the clay, and I'll just dump it through the screen, and then dump it through the 40 mesh screen after I've done it through this one round. And then I start filling the big barrel, and I put as much as I can do in a day or 2 days into the big barrel, and I'll let that settle for a few days before I can draw the water off the top of it. And like I said, I reuse all the water, cycle it back through. I've read that it helps with the colloidal formation of the clay, whatever that means. Some people will dump things into the slurry, like beer or vinegar, something that's going to help break the clay down a little bit. I've read and heard that it makes the body better at throwing, makes it a little bit more plastic. This clay is pretty plastic, it seems to be anyway, straight out of the ground. I do add some sand to the clay, which helps with the drying process and with the firing, helps with the thermal shock that happens in the firing. It helps keep it from shrinking too much too. Kind of like adding sand to mortar, or adding like a pebble to your concrete or something. It's like an aggregate in the clay. Anyway, I'm gonna let this siphon go a little bit, and then I'll show you what I do next. All right, here I am, about siphoned all the water off. I'm just using a sponge here to get the last bit off the top of the clay. I'm gonna take you over here with me and show you the inside of this thing. So you see there's very little water left on top. Just slurry underneath. I'm just gonna get the last. It's okay, it doesn't really hurt anything to leave some of it in there. It'll be fine. It's got to start evaporating anyway, so you set this back up. Okay. And like I said, this has already been screened. It's been run through this window screen and through a 40 mesh sieve. Don't really like having the wrinkles in my canvas there. I kind of stretch it tight to all the corners so I can get as much slip in there as possible.
I'm just gonna transfer it over here. This works. Right here. It's a small.
So at this point, when it's in the drying bin, I'll add some sand, sprinkle some sand in on top. I could mix it in when it's in here, but either way, I kind of add the sand like I do salt when I'm cooking. I'll put a little bit of it in when it's sloppy and slurry, let it dry some, and then when I take it inside to wedge it, I'll add a little bit more sand. So, I don't know why, that's just how I do it. It works for me. Okay, we'll set the bin up for using here with the next batch. Take you over here. So yeah, here's the slurry. See, it fills the pan with the drying bin about halfway. Don't want to get too much in there. That just takes a really long time to dry, so I tend to do things in smaller batches, I guess. You could have multiple bins going at one time if you wanted to process a lot of clay at once. But this seems to work for me because I'll just store it up for a little while after it dries and I get it wedged in the shop. I'll store it in bins. So let me just take you on in here and show you the bins. This is clay that's already been wedged, and this is actually ready to throw. I weighed it out. These are six pounders. I'm trying to do this with one hand. This has been aging for probably about 2 or 3 weeks since it's been dry and ready to use. It's been in the bin for about 2 weeks at least. And that's supposed to help with the plasticity of it. Seems to help a bit. Though, like I said, this clay is already fairly plastic on its own. And I keep it kind of in logs before I get it ready to throw on the wheel. I'll store it in a bin in logs, and then I'll cut it into weighed out pieces, whatever size I plan on using at the time. So I've got 6 pounders in this bin, and the other bin I have 4 pounders. So I'm gonna probably throw a little bit today and work on my clay processing out there. Like I said, once it sets up in the bin and it's almost ready to be thrown, when it's still, it'll be a little bit soft yet, I'll take it wrap that bin up, or the canvas. I'll take the canvas and just kind of plop it down on the floor here, and this nice concrete floor will absorb some of the water out. And if I don't use the floor, I'll lay it out on the canvas or on the plaster table here. And I also have a bunch of bats, so I'll stack those bats on it. If I need the clay sooner than later, I'll lay those bats out on top of the clay to suck some of the water out. There's the pugger. I don't even really use it. I just do everything by hand. So anyway, that's what I do. I'll check back some other time. Maybe I'll film some throwing. Here's some project I'm working on right now. Little bird houses up there. Most of the other stuff's in the drying room right now. Here's my wheel I use. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment. Like, share, subscribe. I'm actually going to go ahead and show what else I'm working on here. Well, I've got you in the shop. So these are some tests that I'm running with some recipes that I found for clay. I don't know where the recipes came from. I've had them for years, so I'm testing them out. I've got the A, the B, and the C. A couple notes or whatever on there, and those are just different. For those of you who make pots and whatnot, you can probably understand what I'm doing here. Those are just different types of clays and ingredients: red clay, ball clay, fire clay, sand, and the numbers beside that are the weights or the amounts of that goes into the recipe. So I'm trying to do a cone 6, and those of you who make pots, you know cone 6 is a temperature reading. It's something like 2191 degrees or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's the temperature I do the electric kiln glaze firings to. So I'm trying to develop a clay body that I can use for glazeware out of that red clay that I dig. And here's some little guys that are those tests. So as you saw, the A, B, and the C on the board there. There's my A. It's pretty nice. These have been bisque fired, so I bisque fired to cone 04. This is the red clay on its own with no. Maybe it has sand in it. I don't remember. But I cut out a 10 centimeter piece, and then I measure it after the firing. So it's 10 centimeters before the firing. Measure it again later to see how much it shrank. Do a little bit of mathematics. This is fired to cone 2, the same clay body. And these are also fired to cone 2, these test bars. I'm not that scientific, I just doing some stuff, playing around. So there's A, that's A. This is fired to cone 04, fired to cone 2. This is just to see what it'll do. And these are fired to cone 6, these little pots here. And I really like some of the colors that I got. So that's the red clay in the recipe that you saw on the board there. That's A. I really like that one. That's very nice. Nice and warm, toasty. And this one, I really like that too. So that's fired to cone 6. These have just been bisque fired, so I'm going to test a glaze on them. I don't have one for B because I ended up not really liking it. There's too many ingredients. I'm trying to keep things simple and go back to the basics. So that's what you see over here. And I'm getting some, got some calcium in the pots. I don't know where it came from. I think it came from the sand that I was using for this batch. It's only on 3 of the B, or C, sorry, C. It's only on 3 of those because I didn't wedge sand into this one. But I did wedge sand into these ones, and you see if we can go in there. Anyway, those are little, some of you potters may be familiar with getting like plaster in the clay, and that's what it does. So it may be some type of limestone gravel or something that's in the sand that I'm using. So I need to go find some new sand. I got that at the hardware store. It's play sand. I'll even show you the bag of what it is that I'm using. But I actually screened some of it and added it to a big batch. See, it's just generic Sackcrete play sand. But there must be some type of gravel in here that is like a calcium base. If you look at it close, there's probably some limestone in there. I put vinegar to it to see if it would bubble, and it did not. So I don't know. I'm gonna quit using it either way. I'm gonna go find some other sand. I found some nice like quartz sand in a bag the other day. These are some simple glaze tests that I'm doing. I'm trying to develop another like ash glaze using, some of these are using the red clay. I think this one with the little speckles in it, that's got the red clay in it that I've been digging. This has the red clay. This one's rather nice. That's two different glazes. That's like a cone 6 Tomoku with an ash glaze, including the red clay over it. Like an oatmeal, I believe they call. So yeah, there's the tests. There's the first tests that I did. The little ring test. So I rolled out a coil and made a ring around my finger to see if it would crack and if it would focus. You'll see no cracks at all. It's very, very nice clay. And again, I really like the color of this one, but it vitrifies a little bit too much. So I may start firing it at a temperature between the cone 04 and the cone 2. So that's the same clay. The bar is fired to cone 04 and the pot is fired to cone 2. So I may try some like cone 03 or cone 02 firings and see what happens. And out here in the showroom, there's a stack of flower pots I've been making with the red clay in different I've got a bunch of different batches because I was adding some stuff to it, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So these are the most simple. I don't think I added anything to that except throwing slop from some previous throwing and the local red clay with some sand. So it's mostly the local red clay. It's just got some red slop in it from previous batch of red clay that I was using. And in here I've got some stuff drying. These are the local red clay. And I believe I have some of that Sackcrete sand in there, so I'm afraid that they might cause some problems. So we'll see. Anyway, there's the showroom. Here's some pots. Kind of a showroom, I guess. I don't know. Some glazed pots that are finished. Thanks for watching.